I will briefly discuss each learning objective in this chapter. Job order and process costing are two common methods for determining product cost. Process costing is used by companies that mass produce similar or identical products in a continuous fashion. Once production begins, it continues until the finished product emerges. Each unit is identical. That is, they have the same amount of materials, labor, and overhead. Job order and process costing are similar in three ways. Both systems track the same manufacturing cost elements: direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Both systems accumulate cost in the same accounts: raw materials inventory, factory labor, and manufacturing overhead. Lastly, the flow of cost is similar. Both systems assign cost to the same accounts: work in process inventory, finished goods inventory, and cost of goods sold. The flow of cost in these two systems is basically the same, with one slight difference. Process costing tracks cost by departments or manufacturing processes, and a separate work in process account is maintained for each department or process. As I just stated, process costing uses a separate work in process account for each department or manufacturing process, whereas job order costing used only one work in process account. Process costing uses a production cost report, whereas job order costing uses job cost sheets. Costs are totaled at the end of a time period in process costing, whereas job order costing totals cost when the job is completed. Lastly, process costing calculates unit cost as total manufacturing cost for the period divided by equivalent units. Job order costing calculates unit cost as the total cost per job divided by the units produced. Process costing assigns manufacturing cost for materials, labor, and overhead to work in process accounts for each department or manufacturing process. It transfers the cost of units completed from one department to another as those units move through the manufacturing process. The system transfers the cost of completed work to finished goods inventory, and finally, when a product is sold, the cost transfers to cost of goods sold. Entries to record the cost of materials, labor, and overhead consist of debits to work in process for each department and a credit to raw materials inventory, factory labor, and manufacturing overhead. The entries to record the cost of goods transferred from one department to another are a debit to work in process for the department to which the goods are transferred in, and a credit to work in process for the department whose work is finished or transferred out of. The entry to record units completed is a debit to finished goods inventory and a credit for the department whose work is finished. The entry to record the cost of units sold is a debit to cost of goods sold and a credit to finished goods inventory. After a company accumulates manufacturing cost in a department, we need to determine the department's output to calculate unit cost. The difficulty is that a department typically has partially completed units. We will translate or convert these partially completed units into an equivalent number of completed units. We will use this formula to calculate equivalent units: the number of partially completed units times the percentage of completion, aka how much work was performed on the units. Two half-completed products are equivalent to one completed product. Two units which are 50% complete are equivalent to one unit that is 100% complete. Likewise, 1,000 units that are 75% complete is equivalent to 750 units. We will use the weighted average method to determine equivalent units. This is the most widely used method. This method ignores the partially completed units in the beginning work in process inventory. Equivalent units are the sum of the units completed and transferred out plus the equivalent units of ending work in process. There is no need to compute the equivalent units for the units completed and transferred out of the department because they are 100% complete with respect to the work that was done. If they weren't complete, they wouldn't have been transferred out. If direct labor is a relatively small amount compared to materials and overhead, it is often combined with overhead and called conversion cost. These are the cost of converting raw materials into finished products. In process costing, conversion cost is often treated as a single element of product cost. I like to think of M&Ms, materials and machines. Remember, we're in a repetitive production environment. Production cost report is prepared for each department. It shows the production quantity and cost data. There are 4 steps to complete a production cost report. I will briefly discuss each one. The first step deals with the physical units, which are the actual units to be accounted for during a period regardless of work performed. The sum of the units in process at the beginning of the period plus the units started into production during the period must equal the units completed and transferred out during the period plus units in process at the end of the period. After we've identified physical units, we need to determine equivalent units of production, which is step 2. We will assume that materials are added at the beginning of the process and conversion costs are incurred uniformly during the process. As a result, we need 2 calculations for equivalent units, one for materials and one for conversion costs. Step 3 calculates unit production cost. Unit material costs are calculated by dividing the total material cost by the equivalent units of material from step 2. The unit conversion cost is calculated by dividing the total conversion cost by the equivalent units for conversion from step 2. Total manufacturing cost per unit is unit materials cost plus unit conversion cost. The last step begins by determining the total cost charged to a department. In this example, $655,000. We need to determine how much of this cost has been transferred out and how much remains in the ending work in process inventory. You will use data from step 2, the equivalent units, as well as step 3, cost per equivalent unit, to complete this last section.